Welcome to USFL Today. I'm your host, Angelo. Happy to bring you another action-packed episode. Make sure you follow me at USFL Today on Twitter, and make sure you follow us, same handle, on YouTube. Set your notifications, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to follow our New Jersey Generals account on Twitter at NJ_Generals. That's a good one, too. You never know what kind of news and notes might show up randomly on those accounts. So let's move forward now with this week's episode. It's the first in our series of 8 teams in 8 weeks, because we've got just about 8 weeks until the season starts. And we're going to begin our 8 teams in 8 weeks with the Michigan Panthers. And to speak about the Panthers with me this week is Jake from PANTHERSHADOW. He's part of the USFL Newsroom. Jake, welcome to USFL Today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Angelo. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on. And we chat offline, online rather, and we talk about our excitement for this season. And I'm really psyched that it's only 2 months away, and I'm looking forward to covering all the teams. And I'm glad the Panthers are the first one, because I think there's a lot of activity, positive activity that surrounded their offseason, beginning with what might be a negative, which is an abrupt change at coach just before camp starting. But I think it might be a good thing. What are your thoughts on Coach Mike Nolan coming in and taking over for Jeff Fisher?
I think with the last year, I didn't sense that Fisher really had it in him. He didn't seem like he really had that fight in him. So I think overall, while I miss him, while I like, his style, what he brought, his experience last year, him not having, everything into it. So I think it's a good thing that he did then step down, allowed someone else to come in and give it the full dedication that this needs to, bring a championship for the Panthers.
Yeah, and Mike Nolan's now the guy, another coach with NFL experience. He's got the pedigree. His father was an NFL coach as well. What are we thinking that the image for the Panthers is going to be with Mike Nolan at the head?
He's a defensive coach, so I think from the top down, we're gonna be a little more defense heavy. We saw some new hires. He added additional uh, position coaches that I don't believe we really had last year. So I think we're going to see an improvement on the defense, especially with some of the acquisitions that Fisher brought in before he left. So I think we'll be defensive heavy.
That's going to be interesting to see as to how the defense responds to sort of a new regime and a new philosophy, especially now with other new parts. There's lots of new with the Panthers. Let's start with the kicking game. New kicker, new punter. Well, they were new in the middle of the season. They're new to start the season. So you're going to have them for the entire year. It feels like that's a big part of the game that hurt the Panthers in the first half of the season that really has been solidified, and should feel confident about that part of the game going into 2023.
Oh yeah, the safety net that having a solid kicking game, brings will be nice to have. Carrizosa was great with punting, so I think with Kramer taking over that role as he did, in the middle of last year, like you said, I don't think we're really going to miss skip a beat there. But certainly starting the season off with a solid kicking game, being able to hit those 50, 60-yard kicks to, get some points when, drive stall instead of having to always have to go for it on fourth. You have that safety net. And I think that'll be important just to get points on the board that we weren't getting at, the start of last year.
Yeah, Cole Murphy, of course, booting a 56-yarder in his second game as a Panther. And then a week later, he booted a 60-yarder. Both of those were USFL records at the time. And then, of course, Ramez from Pittsburgh came in and stole that record from him with a 61-yarder, a beautiful kick of his own. So I think Murphy's going to be using that leg a lot this year, and they're going to be relying on him. So I really like the fact that they have that aspect of their game solidified, because it really did hurt them last year. Quarterback is a situation that, well, for 7 of the 8 teams, it's definitely going to be a new starter on opening day, and the Panthers are one of those teams. What's the quarterback battle going to be looking like for the Panthers this spring as they prepare for the season?
I think it's really going to depend on where Coach Marty wants to take the offense. I think he has two different styles that he really can lean into. You got the more dynamic dual threat quarterback with Barrier that we saw in one game last year against your Generals.
Yeah,
And he played well.
I thought so.
Didn't quite finish the game out the way that I would have liked, but I think coming in, not starting, coming in for injury, he played well in what we saw of him. So like what we have with him. And then when we got to see Love not injured, he was throwing the ball really well. I think that he's going to be more your pocket passer. Um, so I know that's dancing around the question, but I guess with having such QB instability last year, I don't really know what I'm expecting from Marty. I think that with the tight end heaviness that he likes, maybe we're gonna go with Love. I don't know if he's had a quarterback like Barrier, so I want to assume that we might see Love starting, but I definitely think that you can't count out Barrier. I think that there's going to be that battle. I know that Marty has spoken highly of him in previous interviews, so it wouldn't be a shock to see him either.
No, not at all. And they've got quality guys to throw to. You've got the duo of Ishmael Hyman, who's pretty dynamic. Joe Walker, another speedy dude. Gone is Lance Lenore, who I liked a lot. And then you talked about the tight ends from last year. Was Marcus Ball was one of the tight ends who I really liked. And then of course at running back you've got the return of Reggie Corbin, who without him, this isn't the offense that you would like it to be.
No, certainly not. Him returning is absolutely imperative, I think, to some of the immediate success I think we can see right off of the start. Him and Stevie Scott. So I think those two returning, those 1-2 punch that we had last year, certainly going to be important in setting up the run game for our pass game.
Yeah, that was a great 1-2 punch last year. And despite the difficulties that the Panthers faced during the season, they were in a lot of games, and their running duo definitely had impact on the field. And teams did have to try to prepare to stop those guys. Reggie was great, and I think he's going to have a better year this year.
He was working through some injuries, so I think if he's healthy, then yeah, I think he can only be better than we saw from him last year, and that was already enough to earn him all USFL honors.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. He was still all USFL, even though he wasn't maybe necessarily at 100%. Any new additions to the offense that were not there last year that we should keep an eye on as we head into camp? Anyone that caught your eye that they signed?
Oh, well, to kind of tie in with the QB battle, you have Barrier's former weapon at Eastern Washington with Tololo, with Limo Jones.
And then, of course, getting away from the guys on the field, let's talk about some of the advantages and what's new for the Panthers off the field. Number one, of course, is the fact that they're going to be playing home games this year, 5 of them in front of Detroit fans at Ford Field. That's going to be, in addition to the roster upgrades and the coaching changes, just another one of those things I feel that's going to give the Panthers an extra lift and contribute to the overall improvement that I'm expecting from them this season. What do you think, Jake?
Absolutely. I think home field advantage we saw last year plays a maybe not a huge role. Obviously, the team is the largest factor, but having that home crowd, I think, is going to be important in giving a boost. I think we've seen that too with maybe I should mention the other league, but the other league we've seen what the crowds can already do in the first couple of weeks. So I think having the home crowd backing the Panthers is going to be maybe not super important, but definitely be important. It'll be exciting to be able to see what that kind of boost that brings.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be important. The only team that got to play to any crowds last year was Birmingham, and they got to do it 10 times, which is really out of whack and out of balance. But this year it gets to be spread out a little bit more amongst three teams who will have real home crowds, and then a fourth team that might have some local support. What do you think? Like, what's realistic, Jake, to expect from the fans of Detroit for that first game in week 3? Crowd size wise, I mean, we've seen what the XFL's drawing 12, 15,000, 24,000 in one case. Do we have 15,000? Does the crowd have 15,000 in them for that first game?
I think so. You hear it from Moose that he wants to average 15 in Detroit. So you already have that expectation from the league, but just in, me kind of paying attention to seeing where even just the season ticket sales are right now. Uh Panthers are, seeing growth every day with whenever I'm checking the numbers there. And yeah, I think 20,000 for at least week one. I don't think is out of the question. I don't think we quite get to San Antonio's numbers of 24. I don't think we get St. Louis's numbers that we'll see in what, a week or two.
Right.
But I don't see why we can't at least rival what the Stallions bring.
I tend to agree with you, and I think your assessment is a realistic one. And it's really imperative that the Panthers find a way to be 2-0 heading into that first home game, because that will really help juice the crowd and add a little bit of an extra boost, and definitely contribute to any late walk up crowd that might say, let's go check them out. And hopefully it's a beautiful spring day. Am I right in that there's a baseball game that same day for the first USFL crowd? Jake, is that the same weekend?
Yep, same day. Looks like there will actually even be some overlap there. I think with the new pitch clock, that the game will be closer to ending when the Panthers kick off, but I think there'll be some a little bit of overlap. But yeah.
And for the people that don't know the layout in Detroit, Jake, describe exactly what it's like. How close are those stadiums? What's the parking scenario like for those? What should people expect for those that don't know? What's that like over there?
Well, for those that don't know, they are literally separated by Brush Street, which is just a 2-lane street. Nothing, not super wide, just 2-lane street, 2 sidewalks, and that's the difference between the two. And they share a lot of the same parking, so there's definitely something to be seen there, how that plays out with everybody having to share. But yeah, they all share the same parking garages right across the street, so it's going to be interesting when they overlap.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting because it's early enough in the regular season for baseball that the Tigers would really, really have to be in the dumps in the first month of the season for them to not get a healthy weekend crowd in an April Sunday or Saturday. However, if the Panthers get off to a good start, that could create some serious congestion over there.
I think so. I think with 50% capacity is what the Tigers are generally getting, so right around the 20,000 mark. And seeing that with the Panthers, yeah, I think you get a little congested. I know that even with like the 25,000 or so at the Quick Lane Bowl, it can still slow up traffic. It get a little congested. So yeah, I think there's definitely a possibility of that.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see how that all plays out. And I believe that there's at least one other occasion during the year that the same situation happens, where the two are playing on the same afternoon, not necessarily at the same time. So we'll see. But overall, I feel like when you factor everything in, a new quarterback, whoever that's going to be, a new head coach, a new home field, a new defensive first philosophy, a crowd behind you for half the season. This is going to be a completely different Michigan team that should be very competitive and should contend for a playoff spot. By no means is this North Division going to repeat itself from a year ago.
No, not even close. I think this year we have much stiffer competition. I think knowing what we saw last year, the teams that'll needed to make adjustments, being mainly the Panthers and Maulers, will have made those altercations, those adjustments, and I think, yeah, I think it's going to be a four-way race.
Yeah, I mean, massive improvements all around from both of those teams, and both swapping, or changing coaches and both making a lot of other upgrades along the way. Really is going to make for a hyper competitive North Division when these teams all meet during the regular season. What's your win prediction? I know it's kind of a hard thing to say sitting here in March, that I think the Panthers are going to win 8 games or 6 games or 5 games, but what's the realistic number to expect from these guys, do you think?
I mean, so many of the games were so close last year, 0-6 in one-score games, that I don't see repeating itself. So I'm going to be a little conservative, I think, but still a little ballsy and say 7-3. I think that's
Wow.
I think that's where to aim for. With returning, most of our offensive weapons, returning, our offensive coordinator. I think if we have a stable quarterback, then and a retooled offensive line, I don't see why we can't.
7-3 was your conservative pick. I'd hate to see if you're going, a
Well,
little more aggressive.
I'm a bit of a homer. I'll admit that. I've heard enough and felt enough 10-0, but not realistic. I
No
still
way.
no. Stallions and Generals didn't get to hit that mark last year. I don't know if we're gonna see that, but no. Yeah, I think 7-3. I'll stick with 7-3.
Listen, anything can happen, and we all agree that they're improved. So if they're a 500 team, which I kind of have them pegged at around 5-5, 1 or 2 bounces of the ball, it's a fine line between 7-3 and 5-5. We all know that if you follow football long enough, that it's a funny game sometimes, and we'll see how that all plays out. It should be very interesting. Going back to the crowds, I think that if they start winning some games and they have that stretch in the middle of the season, what is that? 3 home games in a row, Jake?
4.
Something like, is it 4?
4. Yep.
4. So it's like weeks 3 through 7 or 3 through 6 or something.
Yep. 3 through 6.
Yeah. 3 through 6. 4 home games in a row like that. They've got to come out of that stretch 3-1 if they're going to have a realistic opportunity to win the division. Don't you feel?
Absolutely, especially with having to then go and play, a couple road games in Canton. Yeah, you gotta get away with at least 3-1 going at home with that stretch.
It's disappointing that week 2 matchup between Philadelphia and Michigan, which really should have been in Detroit, has to happen in Canton in week 2. Why is it again that they can't play in Detroit? There's a concert or something that weekend?
Yeah, I believe they have Luke Combs on that weekend on the 22nd, and you don't mess with country music in Michigan. So
I didn't realize. Is that right? Country music's pretty big in Michigan.
Oh yeah, especially in our country music. You wouldn't think so, but yeah, it's pretty big in Michigan.
Times have changed, man. I mean, even here in New Jersey, there's plenty of people that listen to country music. It's not like how it used to be where it was reserved for only people from certain parts of the country. So, I mean, I get it. A concert's booked in advance. A concert's booked in advance, right?
Yeah, it's especially of that magnitude. So yeah, they weren't going to move it.
Any insider things to watch for, Jake, with the Panthers? Something that maybe the media is not talking about, none of the other community has been mentioning. What do we need to look out for that might be a surprise this year?
Well, it's the 40th year anniversary of the championship, so it just makes sense.
There you go.
There you go. See, 40 years.
Yeah, this is from 1983. There's the schedule, the full schedule right there. I've had this thing a long time. I'm glad you brought up that it's the anniversary. Do you think they're going to be incorporating some of the old school guys this year? I mean, now that that lawsuit thing's been settled, looks like they're going to be embracing more of the past.
I mean, they've already talked about, kind of tying that in when they announced the Detroit hub, so it wouldn't surprise me, but I haven't heard anything as far as, who we might see. But yeah, now that they can start talking about the 80s history a little bit, some of that, maybe not necessarily see any of the footage, but hear names, hear numbers.
Yeah,
I certainly think that, maybe we do see some faces.
yeah. I mean, how great would it be if they brought back Anthony Carter and Bobby Abear and Derek Holloway from the championship, Big John Corker, bringing all these dudes back in front of the fans. The Michigan fans definitely turned out the first time around for the USFL once the team started winning, of course. But they did turn out, and they turned out big for the playoff game in the Silver Dome as well, about 60,000 fans. So I'm really rooting for great crowds, and I'm really rooting for the Panthers to get off to a good start so that Detroit can kind of be launched in a very positive fashion, and then let the season play out from there. That's my feeling about it.
Yeah, can't ask for anything more. Get a win, get some revenge week one against the Gamblers, and go into Canton, see see how we do against the Stars. With they'll be out, out of their home field as well.
Well, it's going to be all very interesting, but I think we did a good job of covering all the aspects of the Panthers for 2023. It's going to be a big year, and I wish you good luck. Jake, what is your Twitter handle so people can follow you for all the Panthers news?
Oh, my Twitter handle is at USFL Shadow.
At USFL Shadow. You follow that. That's Jake. He does a great job of covering the Panthers. He will be definitely on site for at least a few games, right? If not all of them over there.
Oh, I intend on being all for. I got my season tickets. I plan on being there for every game.
How was that ticket buying process? Pretty simple.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Put my deposit in, and then we finally got emails last week. Email on Friday, finally letting us into Ticketmaster, and was able to select seats and was able to pay for those, and just now waiting for them to actually hit my Ticketmaster account, but that's coming later, the beginning of this month.
So it was reserved seating then. It's not like general admission like the championship game was in Canton or even seating in Birmingham was last year. You're actually buying a seat and you're sitting in a seat.
Yep, I have my seat all reserved, my spots right there at midfield.
Nice. Well, it's going to be very interesting. I wish you a great season from a fan standpoint. I wish you a great season from a, community media standpoint, and good luck to you, Jake. Thanks for coming on this week. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jake, Panther Shadow, part of the USFL Newsroom. Make sure you follow him and the rest of the USFL Newsroom. They do a great job of covering this league. Also, make sure you follow me at USFL Today. Visit YouTube and follow our YouTube channel also at USFL Today. That's it for this week's issue or edition of 8 teams in 8 weeks. Next week, as the countdown gets down to week 7, we'll have another team that we'll be previewing for the 2023 season. But that's it for this week's edition of USFL Today. Thanks for watching.